Welcome to the Nutrigenomic Nation podcast with Brian Highfield, certified nutritionist, author, speaker, and founder of multiple successful companies in the health world. Brian is known for educating healthcare professionals and others on improving their health and their life through breakthroughs in nutrition, technology, and biochemistry. On the podcast, Brian interviews thought leaders in the world of nutrition and natural health. He and his guests share the secrets of a whole life natural approach to health and the life-altering results you can get by making easy changes to your diet and daily routine.
Well, welcome to another episode of Nutrigenomic Nation, where we talk about your genetic health. And so today we have a special guest. We have Dr. Guillermo Ruiz, who is a naturopathic doctor. He has a deep love for botanical medicine and has presented nationally and internationally on that topic. And we'll be digging into a lot of his background and also maybe even some of his current research that is going on. But welcome to the program, Dr. Ruiz.
How's it going, man? So nice to be here with you and, spreading some information, some love.
Absolutely. Well, we're very happy to have you. But my first question for you is what I ask every guest on this program is, what made you want to become a naturopathic doctor?
I always wanted to be a doctor. It's one of those things, and I just saw my niece last night. She fell on the trampoline and broke her elbow. And as soon as she got home after the emergency department, she was playing with one of those plastic stethoscopes. And that was me, I had a plastic stethoscope. I always wanted to be the doctor. And I always had this, that clarity, I always wanted to be a doctor. Son of immigrant parents, I took the long way around the education system. And I was, at some point in my career, I was at a level 1 trauma center for kids. I was an EMT, just to always be immersed in that world of health. And that's when I realized that, I still wanted to become a doctor, but the current system of medicine that we have is broken. We use a system of sick care where, you have this, here's your medication, you have this, here's your medication, a revolving door. Now, I'm not saying that modern medicine is bad. Like I said, my niece broke her elbow last night, yesterday, and she'll probably, have some sort of intervention where we fix her bone, there's a possibility of surgery, and that, lifestyle, meditation, and good food choices are not going to fix that broken elbow. So we shine in this emergency type of healthcare system when we need something repaired, but you cannot repair a metabolism with medication. You cannot repair your circadian rhythm by just taking another pill. You cannot repair depression and anxiety just by giving you an antidepressant, and that's where the melding of the ancestral, the evolutionary physiology and trying to reconnect to where we were and modern medicine mesh, and I was like, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be like this doctor where if you needed a little bit of a supplement, I could recommend a supplement. If you needed a medication, I could give you a medication. If you need an x-ray, I could order an x-ray. Everything, trying to remove the underlying obstacle to health. So I was listening to podcasts, reading blogs, and Chris Kresser mentioned naturopath. I was like, oh, what's that? So I started looking into it and reading into it. And sure enough, that's exactly what I wanted, So I say that the naturopathic profession found me, not the other way around.
Awesome. Yeah, and you're exactly right, because we talk a lot about this program about just taking more of a proactive approach about your health. And you're right, we're very good at emergency care. We're very good at diagnosing specific disease and prescribing something. but
with an asterisk.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, with all those with all those side effects, right? But you know, we're not good as a society of taking care of ourselves and preventing that emergency room or that doctor's visit in the first place.
Yeah, in you know, in a dream scenario, and talking to, you know, I still have friends in the emergency department. I have nurses, and you know, and I know orthopedic surgeons, and I know X-ray, you know, people, and in a perfect world, the emergency room would be 4 trauma bays, you know, and maybe 3 or 4 beds, you know, in case, you know, because accidents happen, you know, some, you know, a kid can be, right now you're in Florida and Ohio, so football, you know, sometimes you get overheated, you know, it's not like a life or death situation if it, you know, if it's controlled properly, and that kid might have to go from the field to an emergency department where he gets hydration, you know, and unfortunately, you know, your primary physician is not going to have bags of saline or, you know, things like that. So yeah, we need a couple of, you know, kids have boo-boos and people can get sick overnight or whatever, but it is incredible that at points we would see 200 patients in a day, you know, for, oh, you know, I have a cold, and my friends, you know, my doctor's friends in the emergency department, they didn't do that training to do this primary care, you know, but the system is so broken that that's what we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know one of your specialties is around thyroid health.
Yeah.
And so for our audience who may not even know, what do the thyroid glands do? Why are they important? And how can we keep them healthy? Or what are some naturopathic ways to really help our thyroids operate the way they should?
Well, and that's where I said, you know, when you mentioned that we're really good at diagnosing, and that's why I said with an asterisk, because we are really good at diagnosing once it gets too late. You know, in health is a continuum. It's not an on-off switch. You know, so let me answer your question. What is the thyroid? The thyroid is this little butterfly gland that we have right here, you know, around our neck. And it produces thyroid hormone. Thyroid hormone is a very powerful hormone that touches every single cell in your body. You know, it goes into the nucleus of the cell, and it tells the cell to start making proteins. And then those proteins either burn fat, make hair, you name it. It's basically the catalyst for your metabolism. And, you know, Hashimoto's disease or autoimmune thyroid disease is the #1 autoimmune disease in the United States. It affects women predominantly. And the worst thing is that a lot of women go undiagnosed. And why? Because the reference range for thyroid function is huge. You know, so if you were to pull up your labs and you look at the, you know, at your TSH, that's how we measure, you know, the activity of your thyroid, you would see that it is, the reference range is 0.45 to 4.5, a 10-fold difference. So you mean to tell me that if a person comes into your office and they are at a 0.46, okay, and then a second person comes in and they are at a 4.49. Now, it's for anyone that doesn't know, you know, the way that we measure it is through a secondary mechanism. It's called the thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. TSH is produced in the brain, and it's like a thermostat that tells the thyroid to either work harder or, you know, or slow down. The higher the TSH number is, the more the thermostat is noticing that you need more thyroid hormone. So if you, and it's very difficult to, you know, peg that diagnosis because the symptoms of thyroid disease are so vague. You know, for example, do you have fatigue? And what does that mean? Are you having trouble with sleep? Are you always feeling sleepy? Do you have hoarseness in your voice? Do you feel like you have something stuck in your throat? Are you gaining weight? Do you feel cold? And there's like 50 different symptoms that can arise from thyroid disease. And there is not one mnemonic symptom, meaning that this is this is the symptom that tells me you have thyroid disease. And unfortunately, a lot of women go to the doctor because they're tired, because they are gaining weight, they're doing exactly the same that they were doing last year, and they put on 20 pounds. And doctors are so overwhelmed, they run a thyroid check and they miss it because of that huge reference range on that paper. So what I do in my training, first as a naturopathic doctor, using all those methods of diagnosing, actually listening to my patients, actually not having a 5-minute visit, and then putting together this puzzle in conjunction with looking at your thyroid levels in a functional way. And in my eyes, the optimal levels for thyroid are between 0.5 and 1.0, not 0.45 and 4.5. So it's a narrower range. Mm-hmm. And then fixing that problem, whether it's with supplementation, with lifestyle, with nutrition, and then if that fatigue's still there, if that weight gain's still there, then getting the thyroid under control, and then moving on. Not doubling down because you're not a thyroid with legs, and making sure we're approaching this in a holistic way.
Yeah, for sure. So, and another thing I was fascinated about, something you're doing is a lot of your current research, specifically on multi-drug resistant bacteria and viruses.
Yeah.
So that's everybody's, that's where their brain is right now with the pandemic and everything. And you're using botanicals and other natural compounds. How does that work? Tell us some of the fascinating things that you've discovered through your research.
It's pretty cool because we dunk a lot on modern medicine about giving a pill for this and a pill for that and a pill for this. But even in the functional medicine world, we also think that way. Oh, you have diabetes, here's some berberine, instead of metformin. Oh, you have, you have a headache, don't take aspirin, take willow bark. And willow bark is actually the plant where we make aspirin from, So we are just kind of like sanitizing, the medication, making it less potent by going a little bit closer to the source and giving in the functional medicine world, giving the patient a different type of pill without taking care of the underlying disease. Okay. So when I was in medical school, someone said, oh, the cool thing about plants is that when you use them as antimicrobials, it won't create resistance like antibiotics. And, I kind of scratched my head and I went up to my principal investigator, Dr. Jeffrey Lang, and I was like, I don't think so. and we started basically recreating the studies of creating resistant bacteria with antibiotics and substituting those antibiotics with botanicals. And sure enough, bacteria became resistant to botanicals. And most importantly, by learning that resistance, they also became resistant to antibiotics, which is alarming, because how many people do you know that maybe walk around with a glass of water and they put a couple of drops of oregano oil or peppermint oil or whatever? Well, those are antimicrobials. You wouldn't walk around with a pitcher of water with some penicillin, drinking low dose penicillin throughout the day, because that's, you wouldn't do that, but many people out there are doing that. But since it's natural, it's okay. So, and I don't want to sound like, like I don't use antimicrobials or I don't use antibiotics. I do, but we have to be very, very responsible in the way we do it, specifically because a lot of the supplements that we take are filled with other different types of herbs just to make them look better. Countless times, you look like an adrenal support the supplement, and it'll have licorice, and then they'll put in a little bit of, like, I don't know, curcumin or berberines, or and it can help in some aspects, but it's also an antimicrobial. So we need to be very, very careful. Funny enough, when we started this, I kind of like started doing a lot of experiments with bacteria, but my boss, at the time, he is part of a virology, scientific institution at the Arizona State University, and we started doing the same stuff that I was doing on the side, at a very small scale with bacteria. We started doing some of that stuff with viruses at a much larger scale. And we're always interested in finding things that kill viruses. Okay. And we were able to replicate some of that stuff with viruses. So it's a 2-point, it's a 2-point approach, can we identify plants that can be good antivirals? And then 2, how we have to be careful, because we talk a lot about our gut microbiota, but there's like there is a viral ecosystem that lives in our gut that we shouldn't mess with either. There's a presentation, that I did at the Ancestral Health Symposium, I think 2017, and one of the viruses that we have been testing these plants against has been, since 2017, has been the coronavirus family. So it was in our radar, that we needed to start stockpiling information about what are some good botanicals to stop this type of viral infection.
Yeah, and what I've seen is there's so many different types of viruses out there, and they all behave a little bit different, and some of them are pretty clever. Some of them actually know how to disable some of our own immune system components inside the cell and so on, so that they can proliferate a little bit more inside the cell. And it's just fascinating, the variety of viruses, how we can come up with different approaches for each type.
And that's where, cancer research, viral research, and bacterial research are so important. For example, when we were testing botanicals against bacteria, okay, we were using high doses of different types of plant materials, and then you just expose the same bacteria to the same botanical, and you kill like 90%, and then you save 10%, that 10% that survived, and you grow it again, and then you expose it, and you grow it, and you expose it, up until 100% becomes resistant to that botanical. So then you go and look for actual antibiotics and see which antibiotics don't work anymore. And now you can make an extrapolation that the mechanism of action of that specific plant is, maybe it destroys the cell membrane, or maybe it goes into the nucleus and destroys, the DNA mechanism of the bacteria. Okay. So now we can make better botanical tinctures by selecting different mechanisms of action of the plant, which is, which is how anti-cancer cocktails work. Because cancer behaves a lot like bacteria, where it grows exponentially faster than the other cells around, the cancer. So when it starts growing really, really, really fast, what do? We kill it, and it's going to absorb that, poison faster than the healthy cells, because it's reproducing faster. The problem is that because there's so much growth, there are random mutations, and then the cancer becomes, overcomes, the mechanism of action of that cancer drug, and then you have to change cancer. So the newer research in cancer is creating cocktails with different mechanisms of action to kill the cancer, to prevent the cancer from becoming resistant. Okay. So if we can do that with plants on bacteria, we can study this same plants to see if there's applications against cancer. And then in the middle is that there are some viruses that do cause cancer. They cause mutations that, like for example, HPV, human papilloma virus. So by learning all of this, we can in theory say, if this plant kills the virus, what is the mechanism of action? Can we apply it to cancer cells that have that mechanism of activity? And we can kind of reverse engineer natural ways of fighting cancer viruses and bacteria. So it's just fascinating. And, I don't want to get you banned or anything, but, we have found plants against the virus. I'll leave it like that, and we work with a lot of viruses, but we have found plants that affect the virus.
Who else is doing research like this? Are you the only one out there, or because I don't feel that any pharmaceuticals out there are studying to this extent anyway, some of these botanicals and natural compounds.
We started this conversation with how much we like science, and how we should, take the best from science and apply it. And pharmaceutical companies have been doing this for a very long time in a different way. Like, for example, let's say you have a pharmaceutical company that has a catalog of 200 drugs, like, for example, did you know that Pepto-Bismol has activity against tuberculosis? and how did they find that out? Well, it's basically like this. You have this big catalog and you're like, okay, all these oldies, can we recycle them in a different way? So then we have all these models where, you have like tuberculosis, cancer, peptic ulcers, blah, 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 blah. And then they take all of their old, medications, and then they try it against things that are not related to see if they work. And when they work, then now we can rebrand that old drug, put a new patent on it, and make millions and billions of dollars. So we're basically doing the same. We basically have a really big library of traditional plants that our grandmas used to use, So like, for example, when the Zika virus was huge, we knew that Zika is related to the virus that causes the yellow fever and dengue, So basically, we went to the traditional things that were used for dengue and made the assumption, hey, if this works for dengue, they are related, close enough, it should work for Zika. And sure enough, it happened. It worked. So, and not every plant has that one-to-one, where it works, but that's why we do high throughput testing, so we have, 200 plants. Okay. We have, a new emergent virus, a new emergent bacteria. Okay. And we try all 200 in like a low and high dose. If it doesn't do anything at high dose, move on. This plant is not going to work for this. If it works at a high dose, but not at a low dose, that's going to be your second tier. And if it works at a low dose, that's going to be our banger, And then once we identify 5 or 6 plants that are working against this virus, bacteria, or cancer at a low dose, then we start figuring out the mechanism of action, because we don't want to use combinations of plants with the same mechanism of action. Like, for example, let's say membrane attachment. So if the virus uses, a spike protein to enter into the membrane, and plant A blocks that, plant B, maybe we don't want to add another one, because then the virus is going to have two chances of mutating and becoming resistant. So maybe we want to do a membrane attachment, or we can do, a gyrase inhibitor, or different ways of killing that virus, bacteria, or cancer.
Awesome. Well, I feel like we could talk about this all day, but unfortunately we're almost out of time. But my last question for you is how can our audience connect with you or get in touch with you or just follow what you're up to?
Well, super busy with my practice right now. I do have a podcast, the 30/30 Health Podcast, and you can get it wherever podcasts are available. You can follow me on Instagram or on Facebook at 3030 Strong, 3030 Strong. And yeah, and at Go Health is the name of my practice. And we're always talking about, I'm in my practice, I'm more focused on the thyroid story and endocrinology. So if you guys have any questions, I'm constantly putting cool little things there. And you can follow at ATGO Health, at Go Health.
Awesome. All right. So thank you so much, Dr. Ruiz. So our guest today has been Dr. Guillermo Ruiz, who is a naturopathic doctor. And we hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we hope you join us next time when we'll talk about another topic related to your good health. Thank you so much, Dr. Ruiz.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.